And here we are live at the Virtual Business Cafe. I'm really excited to be with a local entrepreneur, Chris Lambert, the CEO of Kudosi. Kudosi, did I get that right, Chris?
Yeah, Kudosi, yeah.
Kudosi. And I got this off of your LinkedIn profile. So basically, you're providing leadership for companies and people to achieve great things through building a strong culture, enabling process and effective software architectures. You love working with companies and individuals that strive for intelligent, efficient, and pragmatic solutions to challenging problems. So welcome.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Phil.
What got you going in the direction of this platform you've actually created?
It's kind of a sordid journey, and definitely I could be here for days discussing it. But the Coles notes of the journey is this: I've worked predominantly in the past as a software developer, and that journey really saw a lot of change and transition in our industry over the years. When I started, it was very much the role was called a programmer analyst, typically, and we were responsible for managing projects, managing the product side of things, being BAs, being QA, being all of it, right? Documenting and maintaining the software after we wrote it. And then over time, the industry started to really specialize more and more. You started to get the notion of project managers and business analysts and SMEs and stuff like that. And over time, what I found was that in a lot of cases, companies tried to take traditional methodologies for managing people, and they would try to graft those over top of the software development process. And this met with limited success, I would say. In some companies, it worked okay, actually. If you had a strong engineering firm, then a lot of the practices might coincide. But in many cases, it fell short. So about 8 years ago, I started to really dive into and become more of a leader. And my purpose and intent there was to try to take the suck out of the workplace, right? Try to make it fun, make it engaging. And so really that's where this journey starts for me is when I got into that leadership role, I was in the room and I saw, there isn't this magical coordination vision that people have. It's really just people trying to make very important decisions under a lot of stress and a lot of expectations that impact the lives of so many around them. And that usually led to a very negative experience in the end, because ultimately people will fail, things will happen, and people don't really have a clear vision of how they need to move forward to succeed. And even if they do start with it, they don't maintain it. It breaks down. So that's where this journey really started for me. Was there's got to be a better way, and there has to be a way that we can utilize some technology to help take care of the mundane aspect of the visioning and leadership side of things.
Yeah, a lot of interesting points there. Do you have a particular market segment that you see this fitting into?
Well, Kudosi really, from my side, it really comes down to, in general, helping companies succeed. That's fundamentally what we do. So I would say that we don't necessarily have a specific market segment, as in oil and gas or something like that, right? Or the airline industry or what have you. In fact, we have customers from each of those industries using our product. But it's more a question of finding companies that are progressive enough, that want to improve, want to succeed as an organization, and they want to also bring that transparency to all levels of the business, right? Instead of the clandestine, closed door type of approach, they want to embrace the people they have in more of a servant leadership style, and help them be part of the solution, right? So I would say our industry is we're industry agnostic.
So does it speak to or serve a particular size of industry? I know you mentioned there's not a specific market segment, not a niche specifically, Is there a size of company that would, or range of sizes where it would work?
Yeah, right now, Kudosi is targeting companies in that small to mid-size range. And I guess depending on your definition, our definition of that is anywhere from probably 20 people up to the 250 person mark. So that's kind of for some people that would still be all small business. For us, we consider it small to mid-size. And the reason we're focusing that range right now is that Kudosi is we've just got off the ground. We've started to produce. We're now officially into our production release, and we're starting to get that adoption. So really, we're just trying to focus in on some of the smaller organizations, get that feedback, get that valuable feedback, and be able to harden the product and improve upon it, right? Having said that, we do have a couple organizations that are larger organizations looking at the product, and it scales just fine. I mean, that was the intent from the get-go, really, was to create a scalable strategic planning tool, right? But our focus right now is largely in the small to mid-size, because we find that those companies tend to be a little bit more progressive. Not always, but generally speaking, you're going to find your startup with 20 or 30 people that really wants to be progressive, really wants to include everyone within the organization in the solution. They tend to have that flatter structure they're trying to achieve. And so in those cases, there's always pros and cons. And the pro of those organizations is that they're very agile, they're very nimble that way. One of the cons to that approach is that it creates a lot more overhead in terms of keeping all your ducks in a row and avoiding that multi-headed kind of approach where you have conflict in the organization. So that's where I see Kudosi having the strongest immediate impact right now. So.
A burning question. I didn't have this written down, but the more I hear your name, how did you come up with the name, and what's the story behind that?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So a few years ago, my partner and I, Aaron, we started out on this journey, and this was really a passion project. What had happened was I had been working with companies and teams for a while by then, 4 or 5 years by then, and we you always have these traditional approaches to doing recognition, to actually doing employee reviews, right? And really that's what this all came down to in the initial, like in the beginning, the epoch of this was very much, how can I find a way to implicitly measure the value someone's delivered to the organization and really identify that to others, and do it in a way that's not a negative experience, because an employee review is a very negative experience in most cases. Not always, but I, in my personal experience, having been on both ends, I find that it really requires a perfect match for two human beings to go through that process and come out feeling that it's been successful. So, usually the employee reviews, they would happen yearly, and they'd be completely or wildly out of date. Even if they're quarterly, they'd be out of date. You'd start out with assumptions, product team would identify opportunities, and all of a sudden everything's off the rails, and the 3 things that you said you're going to do for this quarter turn out to be on the back burner, so you can't get those things done. Instead, you're working on 10 other things. And so now you're sitting in front of someone at the end of the quarter, and you're both making excuses why you didn't achieve things on the employee review. So getting back to the point of why it's called Kudosi. So after observing this, we started out trying our toe-dipping in the idea of creating a online recognition system. So basically centered around awards and kudos, right? And that was the initial thought. We did write that out. That was Kudosi 1.0. And what we found is that most businesses that we spoke to said, this is a great idea. We like the idea. But the reality is that we have to solve another problem before we can even get to that problem, right? And so we pivoted, and we found and we found that this was not a problem. That's why we are where we are today. And so, with that story, the byline for that, for the initial Kudosi was, I have a kudo, see, right? As in, like, I have this kudo, can you see, type thing. And so we just kind of merged words together and made it Kudosi. But the name stuck. We like it. So regardless of whether it's directly translated into a goal or not, it's a good name and it's good.
I like the concept. I was thinking back to when I worked with probably companies that are larger than what you've said in terms of the scope of the number of employees, because they're global companies. And one of the challenges I always faced was when I had my own review done, and the guy or gal who was my manager at the time, great people, really good technicians, but when it came to doing these reviews, they hated doing them. It was something you had to do. And like you said, you get to the end of the year, because it's done once a year kind of thing. We miss a target. Like you said, the 3 or 4 things I was supposed to get done, I might have started one of them, but and they're not really trained or have expertise in many cases of being a good manager that great reviews.
Yeah, you're right. And in my opinion, that's okay. And the reason I say that is because there's 2 aspects to being an overall leader. There's the leadership side and there's the management side. And not everybody's going to be strong on one side or the other. And I think that's unrealistic to expect that. My personal bias is I believe in leadership. I believe in leaders. I believe in people who inspire others, who lead by empathetic example, who genuinely take the interest of those around them and help them have a better life for themselves and their families. And those are the type of people that I want to support, because in that case, I find, as with myself, if you're focused more on a leadership approach, the tendency is that you tend to be a bit weaker on the management side, right? And so that's where Kudosi was really born, is to actually fill that gap, right? And help you address those blind spots you may have in management of an organization. And further to that, even if you're an excellent manager, one of the difficulties is, nobody tends to really track this information with a level of detail and really understand the timeline and what happened, so that at the end of that journey, you can have a constructive, valuable conversation on the employee review process. So one of the challenges for Kudosi is that it really tries to quantify what we've done as individuals, as teams, within and as an organization, so that as you progress, you're going to find that there are cases where you start something and it's not through no fault of your own, the priorities change. And again, that's fine. That happens. That's life. But the nice thing about Kudosi is that you can track and audit and see where all of those changes occurred, and everything is very clear and transparent at that point. You're not left feeling like you failed, because it's very clear what your goals are and what's happened over time. And that's one of the key features we're looking at building into the app, and this has always been the plan since day one. Was now that we have the platform in place to track goals and help manage all of that, the next piece for us is we've got a dashboard we're rolling out the next couple of weeks. We're going to start building out the analytics and whatnot. And another piece to that is looking in the employee review piece. And in Kudosi, it will simply be a click of a button. It will be, what date did you want to start the review at? Okay, it will go through and it will compile all the information that's been tracked against those goals, all the progress that's been made, and then it will automatically build into that report. You can sit down at any cadence, whether you want to do it weekly, monthly, yearly, quarterly, whatever. And Kudosi will have all that information, so you don't have to worry about memories failing. You don't have to worry about misremembering things. It's all right there, and you can have that discussion. I think that will really level the playing field and make it so everyone coming out of that conversation is better for it, right?
So how much time would the employee need to invest on a weekly basis?
So that's a great question. Currently, Cadoci is a tool that you interact with the product directly. So I would say that in the cases we've had, it really depends on the company and their level of auditing that's needed and what they want to track, right? So as an example, we have a client in the airline space, right? And you can imagine they actually do things like they actually repair components and whatnot. So there's a ton of red tape and requirement for tracking every single step of the way what you're doing. In that case, we found that usually it's around 15 to 30 minutes for a week tops, and that's an extreme case. For a traditional business, like a SaaS type business, or even just a vendor or something like that, the time requirements are much less. It's usually on the order of probably 5 to 10 minutes a week tops, and we're going to one up that because some of our customers utilize tools like they'll utilize like the Asanas and the Jira, Monday.coms and stuff like that. So these are all more project tools. They're more focused on tasks and project components. And so the goal for Cadoci will be integrations. And once that's done, you can imagine a team using Jira, for instance, there will be zero data entry at all. So they don't even have to know the tool exists from the perspective of collecting the data. They can just enter their cards and link it up and away it goes. So, we've been thinking about Trello as might be a good first step for us, given the segment we're in, something like that. So yeah, that's where it's at. Not a large touch at all.
No, I mean, even with the extreme example that you gave, 15 minutes a week, you could do that over a coffee spread out over the week, right?
Yeah,
not a lot of effort.
Yeah, hopefully coffee, not beer, right? Unless it's Friday evening.
Exactly.
We feel there's just a lot of opportunity, and of course, one of the beauties of this is that Cadoci is very much an aggregator for a lot of this information, and so it benefits people not only on the leadership side of seeing at a glance where everything's going, what's going on, and in real time, but it also gives people on the front lines the context as to where do they fit, why are they doing what they're doing, and how it impacts the company.
Very cool. Question that was posed to me by one of my other coaching buddies. I'll read it because it was his, not mine. Okay. How do you manage the measurement of the degree of progress during the time frame that it's being implemented? Is that coming in your dashboard, or is there some other mechanism?
Yeah, so Cadoci, when I first started Cadoci, we started out basing our approach on an OKR type model. And what we decided, we had a lot of feedback. And one of the interesting things is that OKRs are very effective. I utilize them myself, or I have utilized them myself. And I'm a big fan. But the reality is a lot of companies are at different stages in this journey, right? Some companies have zero planning at all. Some companies have this all dialed in right to the nth degree, right? And they live and die by it. So what we found is that instead of trying to get into the argument of cascaded goals versus OKRs versus whatever, instead we made Cadoci open, so you can utilize it in an OKR type model or approach, or you can utilize it more as a cascaded model, whatever you choose. Now, really, in answer to your question about how we measure progress, because of that open approach, our initial approach has been to utilize percentages, right? If you think about it, everything that you do that's measurable can always be translated to effectively a percentage. Like for instance, I have a goal to increase revenue by $50,000 year over year by the end of this month. Okay, that goal, you start out at 0%, and maybe you've got yourself to 25,000 out of the 50. You're at 50%, right? Now, And there's a lot of examples like that. I need to make 100,000 impressions. How many impressions are you at? Divide one by the other, you got the percentage. So that's our approach, is really using percentages to track it. We do have on our roadmap, however, the ability to use things like dollar values, checklists, numerics. That's something that we'll be doing over the next couple months. And that's a bit trickier because if we want to support nested goals, then what if you have one being measured by, say, a dollar amount and another being measured by a numeric, and the parent goal is numeric and the child goal is based on dollars? How do you manage that? So what we'll do in that case is we'll just probably calculate the percentage on each chart and roll it up and translate it to the value of that parent chart. That's the idea. So that's something that we're thinking through right now. But currently we've kept it simple, which is key to Cadoci. We don't want this to be a complicated program. We don't want this to feel enterprisey or sluggish. It should just be, you dive in, you spend 5-10 minutes to drink your coffee, and by then you're an expert, right?
Yeah. I was just going to mention that what gets measured gets done or gets improved, right? If there's no measurement, how can you do it? So this is a tool to assist in that process, is what I understand.
Yeah, that's right. And it really is a system. To your point earlier with regards to the amount of time commitment for users, probably the largest time commitment in this app is going to be the time to plan your goals. And that's largely not the tool. It's more you. It's more the team, right? And that's non-trivial. But that's something that we do anyhow. And one of the biggest comments I've had is that I don't know what I have to plan out. I don't know. Like I have things that are going on. I don't know yet. And my response to that is, what are you doing leading a company then? Because if you have investors that are putting their money on the line, you have people that their livelihoods depend on this company, and this company represents much more than just a physical opportunity. You need to go through the exercise more than ever to actually pave the way, create a beacon in the distance, and create and map out that journey. And yes, Cadoci has been built in such a way that you can very easily put placeholder kind of goals if you don't know the details and you just want to have a placeholder and then break it up or make it more granular later. So we do absolutely support that. But I love the fact that Cadoci at least engages you to the point where it helps really visualize where you're at. And sometimes people find out, boy, we're in the middle of a storm and we don't know where the heck we are, but at least the tools help them kind of visualize what they know to date and begin that process, right?
I hear exactly what you're saying firsthand, as well as my peers in the coaching consulting space. Many people, not all, but many people will create a business plan, and that's about as much. And not to say that that's not an easy task, or not without a lot of work and effort. What they tend to do, though, is they do the business plan to raise some money, either from a variety of different sources, right? So they got their plan, and then their plan sits on a vertically collecting desk on a shelf somewhere. And the only reason they did it was they had to do it to get the money, to get people to buy into it, and then they stray off of that. And as a coach, in our experience, mine is included, is that they may have a bit of a vision, but it's not as clear as what it was when they were looking for the money. Because then reality sets in. They've been running the business for a while, and they've not had a coach, and they've not had a tool like this, and they're great technicians, but they're missing some things. So I can see a tool like this would be very supportive, possibly to help them create the vision, because they have to plug the holes in. They revisit it like a business plan again, in terms of digging deep into what their business is, who their ideal target is, what are the things we need to do. And one of my favorite mantras that I teach in my own coaching world is there's three questions that need to be answered. What is it I want? Why do I want it? And I need to stifle a how. But the how needs to be answered at some point, but I can invent and create that along the way if I know where I'm at today, what I where I'm at and where I'd like to get to, and why do I want to get there. And the challenge with that is it's not pragmatic; it's more futuristic. However, if you don't have a vision, then you don't. I found that you don't invent the steps to get there. And having a tool like this, what I'm hearing, helps with, if you've got the clarity of where you're going, then you can start plugging in the steps and see if you're moving towards that end result, that beacon, as you said.
Well, that resonates with me, Phil, because I'll share with you that for myself personally, I tend to be more of a big picture kind of technology-oriented individual. It's funny. We like to joke. So I work as a CTO, for instance, and in those in that role, and in VP Tech and Dev and all that, I've always been very good at executing and implementing on ideas, right? And I'm usually good at coming up with ideas, actually, too. And so I'm good at those pieces. And to the layman, that sounds like, oh, well, you've got both sides. But there isn't just two facets to this. The piece that I find that's missing, and that's often the determinant of success, and this is my own opinion. I'm not an expert in entrepreneurship by any means, but this is just based off my own experiences. I've noticed when I fail at a business venture, it's not usually because of the idea or because of the execution. It's because of how you connect those two, right? And so what happens is you come up with this idea, and it's very ephemeral, and then you just start going, right? Or this is how I've behaved in the past, right? And you figure it out as you go, right? Like things will just come together as they should. But what you find is that they don't, right? And that you start getting asked simple questions that start blowing up your assumptions and your model, and then you lose this focus. And it's really that focus that drives the execution and the ability to succeed. That's how I feel. This tool, this platform I've created, because that's where it's going, is really predicated. It's really a passion project, and it's really something that's close to the heart, because that's kind of me. I've always been Scotty in the engineering room, right? And the problem with that is that you need to keep track of more than just your own domain, and be less narrow in your focus. And I think that's actually true for everyone in the organization. So yeah, that really resonates with me. I really believe that there is a gap between ideation and execution that is underserved and under addressed. And I think that executive coaches are definitely one of the ways that we're seeing companies and people start to address those. And I'm all for that. I think it's awesome. And I think that Kedosi can be a tool to help assist that journey as well.
So executive coaches, probably business coaches, and maybe some segment of the business consulting side of things, where they have the relationships and they're having the conversations with their clients that are entrepreneurs, business owners of companies that are anywhere from 20 to 250 is kind of the sweet spot. Yet you say it's not stuck there, but that's probably where it sits best, with the possibility to put it in large organizations if they're open and receptive to it.
Yeah,
I would be fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I would say that just to color that picture a bit more, one of the differentiators for us is that I think Kedosi is best used in companies where you have a core team that you need to work together, which is probably 90% of companies. But there are some companies where it'd be a bit more challenging, and we actually are addressing this now. We're working with a company right now who they have seasonal employees, right? So they have about 8 to 10 staff during the off season, if you will, and then their staff over the course of the year will explode to about 80, 90 people, right? Much of them contractors, and so Kedosi works really well from the perspective of having, for instance, folks who are temporarily part of the organization be given goals and being able to track that and understand if we objectively achieve that success or not, right? And especially as business owners, you want to have that vision too in those cases. But one thing we do need to look at too is the ability to harden that solution a bit more, because right now our focus is really on the team building collaboration side for what we call families, right? Like companies where you're trying to integrate the leadership and the employees day after day, week after week, right? So that's one area that it's been a surprise to me, that because I didn't when we initially built Kudosi, I was really thinking of the home team. And it's been very successful outside of just using it for home team. So using external contractors. So we did actually have a prospect reach out to us, and they asked us, do you support over 6,000 people on the system, right? And we're all cloud-based. It's a full SaaS product. It's fully secure, scalable. This is what I do, right? So the software side, it's bulletproof. And so the answer is yes, we can serve those cases. It's just for us as a company, we'd welcome anyone that wants to come in and try the platform. But just for me personally, I've been focused on the smaller companies at this time because I find them a little more accessible. Right? If you're trying to work with and sell your product into a company that has 6,000 employees, you're probably going to spend a year, going back and forth through this dialogue, right? Whereas a company of 20 people, it's like, here, show us the value. Why should we care? You show them the value, and they're like, okay, fine, let's go. Let's give it a shot. So that's the only reason. It's certainly not. It has nothing to do with technology capability. That's no problem. It's more just the sales cycle process and who is going to be more amenable to jumping on board and trying it out. We just have to find the right people that are ready to move forward and be progressive.
Excellent. Well, being respectful of your time and the viewership, trying to keep this in the 30-minute mark, lots of great information. The website address is up there at www.kudosi.com. For those that were looking for more information, I'm sure there's a contact point on your website that they could go and request additional info. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make it even easier. If you look on your screen there at the bottom right, there's that little chat bubble. So that's a built-in live chat system. So they can just click on that and ask questions, and we'll respond as we get them. And I'm happy, by the way, for people to reach out directly too. So if anybody wants to contact me, my email is Chris, CHRS, @kudosi.com.
Terrific. Thanks for being a guest today, a local entrepreneur in the Canadian marketplace, specifically in Alberta. Thanks for being here, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on board, and thanks to all the viewers. I appreciate your time.
Excellent.